The phrase subverting expectations is used to denote a plot twist that the audience does not expect.
You killed him. No. I am your father.
These narrative tactics are employed to challenge the audience's preconceived notions of a piece of media or fiction. Dan Salvalto's Doki Doki Literature Club is a testament to this concept. What begins as a traditional dating simulator turns into a disturbing, metafictional, psychological horror game that breaks the fourth wall and uses many explicit meta-elements. This shift critically analyzes both bourgeois games, a game involving interactions with young attractive girls, and otaku culture. The game enhances this by creating unease and disturbing imagery via gothic horror elements by representing digital decay. The game also embraces a discussion about the audience's parasocial relationship with fictional characters within these virtual spaces, including both positive and negative repercussions. The game utilizes a number of anime tropes within what is considered shoujo games, or Galgames. This genre is very prominent in Japanese visual novels, where a typically male protagonist interacts with a variety of female characters. These female characters are defined by their attractiveness, exhibiting kawaii attitudes and childlike personas.
At least you're honest.
Although these games were targeted to Japanese men with the explicit purpose of being pornographic, this has changed to include a much wider audience that does not include adult content. Doki Doki Literature Club alludes to these tropes through its facade of being a dating simulator. The player can choose 3 out of the 4 club members to date. Spending more time with them leads to scenarios that have sexual undertones, in an effort to grant a false sense of security before the game's real twist. The game's main cast of characters are each based off a stereotype within anime and the bourgeois genre, which is subverted to enhance the game's horror elements. For instance, Sayori is based on the Genki girl trope, that is, a female character who is lively and full of energy. The game progresses where it is revealed that she has depression. Regardless of the player's choice, she commits suicide at the end of the game's second act, causing the game to glitch and crash. The glitching and intentional computer software bugs kickstart the game's true nature as a metafictional psychological horror game. The main common meta-horror elements within these characters and the game are the visual glitching and corruption taking place. These explicit meta-references contribute to create an unsettling visual experiences, utilizing what is known as the uncanny and gothic horror to frighten the audience. Certain explicit meta-references such as graphical glitches, characters overlapping text, and misaligned still images create unease for the player, given they do not expect these to happen in a place of safety and comfort. Matthew Allen, in a journal article describing Doki Doki's usage of gothic elements, argues that the game uses these specific elements, which contribute to a form of horror that deals with the familiar unfamiliar. This is known as the uncanny, as the game plays on the expectations of the player by subverting their preconceived notions on the conventions of the visual novel. Matthew Allen also contends that these elements of uncanny attribute as a form of gothic horror. This is because they represent digital decay, and a, quote, familiar, unfamiliar version of what the player has previously seen, end quote, to create a great sense of dread commonly seen in Gothic literature. One example of this is through the character of Natsuki, who is based off the tsundere trope of a female character who is brash, cold, tough, and later develops a softer side for the protagonist as they become the love interest. Natsuki's character is developed to create unease by her special poems, where the game implies she is malnourished and abused by her father with, quote, screams of pain, sickeningly pale skin. Her visual horror elements are inspired by internet creepypastas, as her skin becomes pale white, and her distortions of her eyes and mouth correlate with her dislike of comments relating to her physical appearance. These glitching effects and disturbing subject matter combine together to create an unsettling atmosphere through the uncanny and Gothic foundations. Therefore, by utilizing the familiar-unfamiliar to subvert the character's tropes, the game creates unease and tension through the subversion of Gothic horror elements. One of the most important discussions that Doki Doki Literature Club forges is the topic of parasocial relationships with fictional characters, challenging the audience's relationship with the virtual world. The concept of a parasocial relationship refers to a relationship that is entirely one-sided with little to no mutual chance of a relationship forming. The concept is referred to intimate relationships between audiences and celebrities, where an individual develops intimacy and perceived friendship with a celebrity or a talk show host. Parasocial relationships can also occur with fictional characters, as some fans who engage with a text may go beyond the normal fandom and see the text as life, developing an intense emotional bond with the character. This type of audience engagement is known as a transparent mode of engagement with the text's fictionality. With this context, Monika is the most important character in the cast of Doki Doki Literature Club, as she serves as the game's primary antagonist. Her obsession with the player deliberately acts as a commentary of the parasocial relationships within the cultural sphere surrounding boshoujo games or compulsive otaku. Monika reinforces this notion by forcing the player to choose her at certain parts of the game's second act. One noteworthy example is when the player is forced to choose who to spend time with on the weekend to help with the festival. On PC, the game will physically pull the player's mouse cursor to select Monika instead of Yuri or Natsuki, giving the player no free will or agency in their actions. These explicit meta-references convey the obsessive actions of Monika's parasocial behavior that removes free will from the player. As a result, this creates a perversion of the typical parasocial relationship that audiences would usually expect, which is atypical from traditional relationships between audiences and fictional characters, forcing the player to come to terms with the fictionality of the text through Monika's obsessive behavior. Another example is during the final act, where Monika asks the player if they will go out with her, with the only option to say yes. These obsessive personality traits are in a manner that Travers defines as a cultural criticism that the players of dating sims often romanticize, further guilting the player for their engagement with a genre whereby characters can literally decide the direction of female characters' narratives, and have their affection for particular characters automatically reciprocated. Travers examines how Monika's behavior correlates with how dating sim players view virtual female characters with obsessive, controlling behavior, emphasized by the constant reference of just Monika when the game glitches out, and the lack of free will that Monika instills in the player in the final act. Monika's obsession with the player mirrors that of audience transparent modes of engagement, whose obsessive attitude with the player behind the computer creates a reflection of the type of obsessive player who may play these dating sims. Thus, the game functions as a critique of the obsessive parasocial culture of bishoujo dating simulators. Monika's self-awareness of being trapped and subsequent deletion of the game acts as a commentary of the player's relationship between fiction and reality, which critically asks the player whether true happiness from personal relationships in the virtual world can be a reality due to the lack of free will in dating simulators. Cham argues that dating simulators can bring social withdrawal and create lower chances of socializing and, quote, eroding their existing social circles in favor of virtual friends, end quote. particularly for introverted people who remove themselves from social interaction. The final act has Monika deleting the entire game after Sayori expresses self-awareness similar to herself priorhand. Monika realizes that no matter who becomes president of the Literature Club, they will discover that it is just a game and that they have no free will. She deletes the game in its entirety, stating that the Literature Club is truly a place where no happiness can be found, and exposes a horrific reality that no character has free will of their own accord to create their own happiness from personal relationships. This idea is further explored in the end credits song Your Reality, sung by Julianne Ashcraft, who sings a final song expressing her love for the player.
Is it love if I take your is it love if I set you free?
The song epitomizes the game's message about the doomed nature of virtual relationships, as Monika expresses that no matter how much she changes the game's code, she is forever doomed to be trapped in the game's world of ones and zeros. Monika accepts that she and the player cannot be in a real relationship.
If I can hear the sound of your heartbeat, what do you call love in your reality? And in your reality, if I don't know how to love you, I'll leave you be.
Monika's acceptance of the player's inability to be with them reinforces the idea that virtual relationships cannot be a substitute for real relationships. Her final exclamation, "I'll leave you be," exemplifies this concept as she deletes the entire game, functioning as a critical examination of the negative implications of virtual relationships. However, while Doki Doki Literature Club can be interpreted as a critical metafictional piece about the horrors of virtual relationships, the game in many ways acts as a celebration of video game characters and their ability to empathize with their struggles. Cham also examines reasons as to why people turn to virtual relationships at the expense of real ones. Factors such as unemployment, overwork for the employed, and low wages are common factors, particularly in Japan, where working conditions are so poor that the concept called karoshi means death by overwork. These factors can help answer why many people turn to virtual relationships for comfort and safety due to conditions outside of their control. Cham also examines the benefits of dating simulators to those who are not in personal relationships, including how they allow for players to build up confidence and self-image for themselves, train themselves to understand social cues such as flirting without fear of rejection, and for queer youth to better experiment with their sexuality. Such examples are positive effects of players who engage with dating simulators, allowing for potentially more positive, real-world social interactions. Doki Doki also examines the positive outcomes of virtual relationships through the game's dialogue in the alternate ending, which requires the player to spend time with every club member through multiple playthroughs of saving and loading the game. This ending has Sayori, now sentient, thank the player for spending time with every member of the club. "I wanted to thank you for spending so much time with us all." The game ends without Monika deleting the game, and a final poem being a thank you message from the developer Dan Salvato, commending them for achieving the special ending, and commenting that everyone likes different types of games. People who enjoy dating sims may have a heightened empathy for fictional characters, or they might be experiencing feelings that life has not been kind enough to offer them. If they're enjoying themselves, then that's all that matters. Dan Salvato comments on how interactive art gives the players the ability to empathize with fictional characters. He argues that people's perception of video games is based on what gives them fulfillment in life, such as being a friend, even when life is hard on you. Thus, Salvato's remarks on players' tastes and interests for all types of games, such as shooting games, casual games, sandbox games, anything, as all that matters is what brings people fulfillment and joy within the interactive media of video games. Doki Doki Literature Club analyzes both Boshoujo games and otaku culture through Monika's obsession with the player by using fictum, explicit, and critical meta-referencing to make a statement about the potential negatives of the culture of the genre. The game utilizes the tropes of the genre to critique both dating sims and Japanese popular culture through this critical lens. As a result, Doki Doki Literature Club is both a critique and a celebration of what brings fulfillment to the player's personal relationship with video games. including the characters that shape them.